continuing in our workbook notes for Introduction to Statistics, and we are on section 1.1, page 2, where we will discuss key statistical terms and applications. The population is the collection of persons, things, or objects under a study, and a sample is a small part of the population that we realistically can study. In the question of how many hours you slept last night, my sample was the students in the class that I asked, the students in the statistics class that I asked, and maybe my population would be all the students in Tompkins Cortland Community College that take statistics only, or maybe just come to the first day of class. Maybe even all the students of Tompkins Cortland Community College. So you have to think what is the group that you are trying to study, and then how you will extract the sample out of that population. Every person or item that you end up studying, and that item is an item from the population, but ends up in your sample because you are studying that item, you had access to it to study, is called a subject or an individual or an observational unit. From the sample, you will find and calculate a measure, a number that will represent a property of your sample, and that it will be called the statistic. And this statistic will estimate the same measure of the property of a population that is called the parameter. So, for example, I will average the final exam grade of my students in my statistics class to use it as an estimate for all the average of all statistics students for their final exam grade. So the statistic and the parameter are actually the same measure. The average of the sample will be an estimation of the average of the population. A proportion of heads and tails in your experiment will be an estimation of a proportion of heads and tails in the population, which would be infinitely many repetitions. One of the main concerns in statistics is how accurately the statistic estimates the parameter. For example, was 3 out of 4 heads a reasonable estimation of the probability of heads when flipping a fair coin? So, was your statistic accurate enough to estimate the population parameter? In the case of sleep hours, would the average of sleep hours for this group be an accurate estimation of the average of sleep hours for all students at the college? If that is the case, would the average of this group of students be adequate or accurate for representing the population parameter? We can understand that the two averages will be different. Are we picking from the same population? Are we selecting the students well? Do we have a good sample? Do we have good data? The accuracy really depends on how well the sample represents the population. So the most important part, and let's change the color here, the most important part of statistics is how well the sample represents the population. And this for you is the most important part of your statistical study. So a representative sample is a sample that contains all the characteristics of the population, And when we are selecting a representative sample, or when we hope we have selected the representative sample, we are trying to measure something. This is called a variable, usually denoted with an uppercase letter X or Y. And that is a characteristic of interest for each subject in the population. In the example of the sleep hours, the number of hours that the student slept last night was the variable. A variable could be numerical or quantitative when it has a numeric value with specified and identical units. For example, how many hours you slept at night had an answer that was a number of hours. The units were the hours. And a categorical or qualitative variable will be a variable that places subjects in categories. So for example, I could have asked you, are you an only child? Are you the first child? Are you a middle child? Or are you the youngest child in your family? I could have asked you, does your last name begin with a vowel or with a consonant? If you are going in, say, elections or voting, if you are going in conference registrations, if you are going in orientation for your college, you go and you sign in categories based on your last name initial. So are you in category A through K? Are you in category J through O? Are you in category P through Z? Something like that. That will be a categorical variable. The actual values of the variable that you collect are called data. And the data is the plural for the singular word that is the datum, and data is the collection of the values. For example, in the survey that you have filled in the beginning of the semester, you had to answer yes or no. You had to answer with a category, or you had to answer with a number. And that collection of all of these values that came in as answers, just the answers, would be the data for this survey and this study. Now, the problem with being able to have a representative sample is, how are we going to get that? That's the hardest part in statistics. Unless you have a good sample, you will not be able to produce a good inference for the population, which is the purpose of doing statistics. So for example, if you want to find the average number of hours TC3 students study the first week of classes, and on Monday of week 2 you survey a sample of TC3 students, how will you collect the representative sample? So pause this video and do a little bit of thinking of how you would go about to decide what makes a good sample of TC3 students. So first you need to know the characteristics of your population. So if my population is TC3 students in general, I need to know what kind of students are at TC3. Are they online? Are they attending in person? Are they full-time students, part-time students, commuter students, residential students? What kind of ethnicities are represented at the college? What programs of study do we have? Are there programs that are more demanding than others? What is the age of the student? What is their gender? Do we have special populations like veterans, first-year students, ASAP students, EOP students? So all of these groups and characteristics that describe members of the population need to be represented in your sample. So how will you collect your sample to be a representative sample? To include online students, to include in-person students, to include full-time students, to include part-time students, commuters, and residents. and all the ethnicities represented in the proportion that they are represented at the college, and all the programs of study represented in the proportion of students per program, and the ages in the correct proportions, and the gender, and the special populations. Were you able to include all of those in your sample? So, to collect your sample, you have to find a way to include observational units, subjects, individuals that represent the population, that include, that have the characteristics of the population. So we will have another chapter on how to conduct sampling. We will leave this for now, and we will focus a little bit on the key terms. Key terms being, what is a population, what is a sample, what is an observational unit, what is a statistic, what is a parameter, what is a variable, is a variable numerical or categorical, what are the data in each study. So here is an example. Determine what the key terms refer to in the following study. We want to know the average mean amount of money first-year college students spend at ABC College. So the question is, what is the average money first-year college students spend at ABC College on school supplies that do not include books? We randomly survey 100 first-year students at the college. 3 of those students spend $150, $200, $225 respectively. So first question for you is, what is the average amount of money first-year college students spend at ABC College on school supplies? And again, try to pause the video before you hear the answer from me. So that will be the parameter. The parameter is the average amount of money all the students in the college spend on school supplies. Parameter. And the population is first-year college students at ABC College. This is the population. And of course, if I had access to all the students at ABC College, I could send them a survey and wait for 100% of them to respond to the survey and then collect that data. If I had a different way, for example, if I was part of the bursar office and all the supplies were included as a package in some information that I could access through the student records, then I wouldn't have to survey the students. I would just have to be able to access that data. We randomly survey 100 first-year students at the college. So they are first-year students. They are from ABC College, and it's only 100 of them, not all of them. This is the sample. The sample has to be a group from the population, and 3 of those students tell us that they spent $150, $200, and $225 respectively, and these are the data. The data were the values of the variable. Now, what's the variable? The variable is the amount of money one first-year college student will spend in school supplies other than books, right? So the amount of money a first-year college student from that college spends on supplies. The values that were collected are called data. So let's do again another example. We want to determine the population, the sample, the parameter, the statistic, the variable, and the data. You want to determine the average number of glasses of milk college students drink per day. Suppose yesterday in your English class you asked 5 students how many glasses of milk they drank the day before, and the answers were 1, 0, 1, 3, 4 glasses of milk. So again, pause the video, try to answer this question. It is also included in your statistical investigation in our online course. And try to think, what is the population, which is all the individuals you want to study? What is the sample, which is what actual individuals from the population were you able to access? What's the parameter, which is the population statistical summary that you are trying to evaluate, to know the value of? What is the statistic, which is the corresponding statistical summary from your sample that you can use as an estimation of the parameter? What is the variable? So basically, what question did you ask and what values did it take? That would be the data. So you can pause the video and try to see if you can answer the questions. So the population is all college students, and the sample was the 5 students in my English class that I asked. The parameter I'm trying to estimate is the average number of glasses of milk per day all college students drink. The statistic would be the average number of glasses of milk per day that my sample said they drink. So I will add the values of the data, 1, 0, 1, 3, and 4, divide by 5. That comes to 1.8 glasses per day for the sample, for the students in the sample. The variable is the question that I asked. My question was, what is the number of glasses of milk you had yesterday? So one of each of the college students that I asked in my sample drank per day, and the data I collected were the values 1, 0, 1, 3, and 4.